to the Dark Moon Mystery Podcast. Okay, today I have done some homework and I am going to talk about the echoes of the old gods, the rise and fall of paganism in the UK. So, it's been quite a sort of a history grab here, and I am quite shocked on how little we know. So what I've got is facts. Now, I love paganism, so my facts may be coloured with a little bit of hope here. But I have tried to stick to the facts as best as I can. So we're going to step into the misty groves and ancient hills of the United Kingdom. Not that united these days, but we're going to explore the rise and fall of paganism. From the Celts to the Anglo-Saxons and the slow tide of Christianity that swept it all away. Well, almost. This is the tale of gods, rituals, and a legacy that's still with us today. So grab a cup of English tea, or maybe a horn of mead, and let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to start at the beginning. Well, at least as far back as I can trace. So around 800 BCE, before the Common Era, and the Celts are settling into now what we call the UK. These folks weren't just warriors and farmers. They had a really rich spiritual life and a really rich law. The Brehon law was amazing, but that's a tale for another stage. We're going to talk about their spiritual life. They had a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses tied to nature, from the roads to the springs to the rivers, the trees, the groves. The spring keepers and the river keepers, they were the maidens and the guardians of the spiritual places. And they saw these places as really deep and sacred. And to a certain extent, so do I. Leading the charge were the druids. Now, this again is hard to pin down because they were mysterious figures, right? Now, we can call them druids because the Romans certainly did. Or they were just priests, part advisor, part keeper of the oral traditions. They didn't write much down. They knew their laws. They knew their songs. And what we know comes from archaeology and later Roman accounts. And the Romans weren't that fond of the Druids because they tried to wipe them out a few times. So it is all speculation at this point. The gods like Lu, the master of skills, or Danu, a mother nature figure, were big in their world, and a lot of that is remembered through the Irish connections. But then in the 43 Common Era, the Romans crash the party. They bring their own gods, Jupiter, Mars, Venus. These are all familiar. And something fascinating happens. Instead of wiping out Celtic beliefs, they blend them together. You get this mix called the Gallo-Roman religion, where a Celtic god like Lugus might get paired with Mercury. Temples pop up, shrines get built, and for nearly 400 years, this hybrid paganism thrives. But when the Romans pack up and leave, around 410 Common Era, the stage is set for a new act. Enter the Anglo-Saxons. These guys, the Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes, sweep in from northern Europe in the 5th century, bringing their own flavour of paganism. They've got gods like Woden, so you think about Odin with an English accent, maybe, I don't know, but Thorin, and their version of Thor, complete with thunder and hammers. Their religion is practical, focused on keeping the family safe, crops growing and disasters at bay. They're burying their dead with treasures, holding festivals, and leaving their mark with place names like Woden's Field. It's patchwork, though. Celtic paganism hanging on in there in Wales and Scotland, while Anglo-Saxons dominate England. Okay, so the pagans have got a good run. Centuries of it, right? Evolving with each new wave of people. But here's where the plot thickens. Christianity has been creeping in from the edges. In Wales, Scotland and Ireland, it's already taking root. By the 5th century, people like St. Patrick and St. Columbia are starting to get a foothold. But in England, the big moment comes in about 597 Common Era. A guy named Augustine lands in Kent, sent by Pope Gregory, and he's got a mission: convert the Anglo-Saxons. He starts with the king, King Aethelberht. He says, sure, why not? And probably started seeing some political perks and gets baptized around 600 Common Era. From there, it's a domino effect, right? So the Northumbria's King Edwin converts in 627. East Anglia follows in the 630s. Mercia holds out with King Penda, the last big pagan holdout, until he dies in 655. By the late 7th century, most of England's Christian kings have converted. It's not a clean sweep, though. Some places flip back to paganism for a bit, and it takes almost about 90 years to stick. Now, I could get a lot biased here. Why did they switch? But power and prestige, maybe the appeal of books, literacy that came with the church, but it's a top-down thing. It comes from the top, and they decided that this would be good for the people. And the missionaries are out there preaching, building churches, changing hearts and minds. Yeah, changing them with an awful lot of fear, in my opinion, but there we go. So the kings started this all, and they were promised a lot. And then it trickles down into the people. However, people are very good at worshipping whatever they want to worship, but just not telling anybody from the top. But that's my opinion. Now, okay, so just when you think paganism is being smothered, the Vikings show up in about the 9th century. They're swinging axes and worshipping gods like Woden and Thunor, right? They leave traces, like a hill called Othensberg, or Hill of Odin, and the pendant shaped like Thor's hammer. But they can't turn back the tide of Christianity, so within a few decades, these Scandinavian settlers are converting too. By the 11th century, paganism as an organized religion is pretty much gone. But there are rumors and opinions, that a lot of the old Roman druids that were so feared by the Romans have merged into the clergy. They certainly produced the Book of Kells and things like that. So, did they? How much? But as historians put it bluntly, there's no evidence of a pagan resistance surviving against Christianity, which makes me a bit sad, right? So I was looking at this thinking I didn't like these answers, but these are the answers that I was coming up with. I mean, there is a twist. It didn't vanish completely. It is lingering in the shadows still to this day, woven into folklore. People are still tossing offerings into wells, honouring trees, or keeping the traditions the church couldn't stamp out. Our days of the week is the prime clue here. It's a pagan capsule, pagan time capsule. Tuesday comes from Twu, Wednesday from Woden, Thursday from Thor, Friday from Frigg. Every time you check your calendar, you're nodding to the old gods. Major flag here that pagan hasn't disappeared. It just went underground. So if we fast forward to the 20th century, and paganism is making a comeback, sort of, okay? Modern groups like Wicca, Druidry, and heathenry start popping up, inspired by the past, but remixed for today. In the 211 UK census, over 774,000 people said that they were pagan. It's estimated it's closer to 250,000 people. It's not the same as the old ways. Less animal sacrifice, more hippies and peace and love, which was not quite how the old ways were doing it. They had definitely more darker connotations, but it's more eco-spirituality, and it shows. It's there. The roots are still there. People still turn to their ancestors and the natural world around them. So what's the takeaway? So paganism in the UK rose with the Celts, morphed with the Romans and Anglo-Saxons, and fell under Christianity's slow, steady march. Okay, that's what you're going to get in the history books. It's a story of adaptation, resistance, and survival, in fragments at least. But Next time you're out in the countryside or see an old well or an old tree or even an old church, a lot of these old churches have the green man, sort of the gargoyles. And a lot of pagan imagery and symbology is carved into these old churches. The standing stones, I live close by to Avebury, Glastonbury and Stonehenge. These are memories that are carved into it. The old gods may be quiet, but actually they're rising up. They haven't left us. There are people that are seeing sacred things. We've had an awful lot of white deer appear and get sacrificed. White albino beings of the animal kingdom that have arisen up to remind us of our roots. Okay, so that's about it for today's episode. If you've enjoyed this, deeping into the UK's pagan past, please subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.